All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, I gotta wait. Okay, we can move on to reports.
Well, A through D, both Nicole Marie and I put in comments for it. And I'm just going to open up the floor to you folks to see if you have any questions.
I had one, and it's really just informational for me. I still feel kind of new. I saw, like, was it 5,200 for MPL going to Madison? What's MPL?
Tim, I'll let you handle that one.
It's the Madison Metropolitan Planning Organization, I think it is, which it's a little complicated. We were a member, and then when the census occurred, we were basically put in our own district, but we still participate in their activities. And in fact, Alder Caravello is a citizen member of the board. In the past, Director Shield was a technical member of the board, and we did receive one grant that we'll be using this year for the 4th Street construction project to Isham. That was a grant that it was federal money administered through the MPO. So we still enjoy some of the benefits, but I don't believe we can write any more grants through them. But they do quite a bit with like West Beltline studies and future park and rides and the whole transportation system for Dane County.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we can let Dave or proceed to the next items.
Retirement payouts, we did have 2 individuals who announced their retirements. One left early January, and one will be leaving fairly soon, I believe. But under the accounting standards, once they announced their retirement, it became an expense for calendar year 24. But I'm going from memory, only spent about $50,000 of the $85,000 that we put in the budget each year. So not as bad as we had guessed, but still a large dollar amount. Any questions on that topic?
Dave, if other retirements come in later this year, is that going to put that fund in at risk, or the remaining $35-ish thousand?
Well, I'm not aware of any retirements that will come in for this year. They pretty much have to announce, I'd say by February 28th, that they're retiring for it to affect 24. Otherwise, it's going to be 25,000 or 25 for the calendar year. And we, just like in past budget years, we put in 85,000 again for calendar year 25. There's been some talk about some potential retirements this upcoming January, but nobody's given clear indication of that yet.
AJ?
I did receive official notice of retirement today from Mark Edwards. That'll be a smaller one. He has not been with the city as long as the other staff members, but I did receive that letter of retirement today.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both.
Any other questions on that topic? Okay, the last report is just communication with Moving Out Stoughton. They paid recently about January 15th, give or take, so that was recognized as 24 income. And the second page just shows the receivable that they still have. or receivable to us, payable to them, I should say. Any questions on that topic?
Dave, could you do just a tiny bit of background on moving out Stoughton for others that might not know what that is?
This was before my time, so I may need some help with Tim on that one, but they actually redeveloped some buildings in the district. I believe it's just off railroad, the Isham. No, it's not off Isham, but they had a agreement that they were going to pay us a dollar amount. I'm flipping through my paperwork here.
Yeah, while you're flipping, it's down on A Street. They manage the Alvinstead units, and that was under Section 42 tax credit and using tax incremental financing down by the railroad corridor. And I believe it was budgeted to go over a 30-year life of the TIF down in that redevelopment area.
Yeah, it's actually through 37. They essentially borrowed $610,000 from us, and they're paying it to us. I believe it's 4% interest. I don't have that noted on here. So right now they still owe us $386,000. It was a 3-year period for years 2020 through 2022. They did not make a single payment, although there was good tax increment in those years, so they did not need to per se, but they're a little bit behind on their payment schedule, but I'm not too concerned with it.
All right, thank you all for the background.
Any other questions on moving out or Alvinstead? Okay, I'll let you folks continue.
Thanks, Dave. So item 8 is discussion and possible action, excuse me, regarding Stoughton Utilities building rent. And
Rick, are you there?
Yes, Dave, I'm here.
Okay, I'm going to let you give us an update on this topic, please.
Sure. So I guess the update is I don't have any substantive update. I emailed the attorney that has been working with Stoughton Utilities on the rent issue right after the meeting 2 weeks ago. She said she was still working with Stoughton Utilities on the rent issue. I think the way that we feel that you can make this work with PSC regulations is to charge for building depreciation and then apportion any maintenance costs to Stoughton Utilities. So that's obviously a change. Go ahead.
Rick, I've said it before, that's not going to do it. Depreciation is only about $20,000, and right now, Stoughton Utilities pays for all the maintenance. So if we would pick up the maintenance cost, then it'd be charging that to them, so it'd be a wash. We're still at the same point. We can't collect under the PSC rules, but as my memo indicated, that's $128,000 difference to the general fund. I don't know how much more I can say on this topic.
Yeah, so part of the reason we were having this discussion is in dealing with Baker Tilly, they're the accountants that sort of specialize in the PSC accounting rules, and they've indicated that the lease payments themselves likely wouldn't comply with the PSC regulations. So that's why we sort of had to rework this. But as Dave mentioned, since it's a change in practice, that does leave a budget gap.
So at this point, we don't have a lease.
Correct, and
And that's kind of when we discovered that
Mhm.
there was this issue because the lease had run out. We were working on negotiating a new lease, and then we learned about this Public Service Commission rule.
Mhm.
And we're trying to figure out how to navigate it because we'd already,
Budgeted for.
yeah, we'd already budgeted, assuming that we'd be able to charge, market rent basically, or something at least close to it. And now we're being told that we can't, so it's creating a gap, and we don't really have an end game at this point.
yes, and like I said, I've been trying to connect with the attorney who works with Stoughton Utilities on sort of like the regulatory matters, but we haven't had any follow-up discussions since the last meeting.
And Dave, help me out here. So are they paid up to what point?
They haven't paid anything for second half admin fees, the entire amount of rent for 24. And if my reconciliation's correct, and I've got to fine tune it, but I show they still haven't paid $98,000 for calendar year 23. That last item, I cannot say for certainty, but I have a good feeling it's correct.
Okay, so I think that's something that maybe we can verify and then figure out if there's anything we can at least do, from the past. Obviously, moving forward is different.
Right. I mean, the lease had been in effect for 30 or 40 years.
About 35.
Yeah, and the lease itself, I mean, it's questionable, like, that the city leases to itself. I mean, because the utilities are like a subset or a department of the city, even though they exercise some independence. But so we're basically just trying to do a resolution, or effectively what would be an MOU, just so that we're papering the understanding between the city and the utility, since it operates under its own rules as far as the PSC goes. But right now we're sort of relying on the opinion of Baker Tilly, which they work with the PSC accounting rules all the time, so it's kind of hard to go against their opinion on this.
And I'm not disagreeing with the PSC rules. I agree that we have to do it. The 24 budget sets up the lease amount at only $20,000, which is the approximate depreciation. I just need to figure out what to do from 23. I'm looking for the elected officials to give me some direction here, please.
What's 23, I imagine we're probably past the deadline. What are the deadlines we're looking at? From a reconciliation, maybe that's for Dave.
Put it this way, if I have to write off the revenue I recognize in 23, that's a $93,000 loss. And if I don't have the 128,000, that brings it up about a $210,000 loss. If you as elected officials want me to do that, I will. I really just need some guidance because I can't do anything else at this point. I'm looking for guidance, please.
So I guess the question was, is there a deadline where you have to make that decision? So, I mean, how
Put it this way,
urgent is the guidance needed?
We start preliminary field work late February. So I got to have an answer by February 25th.
Okay, so I think what we need to do is follow up with the attorneys and let them know the urgency of this. And then I don't know if there's another conversation we can have Baker Tilly either prior to or during the audit. I mean, we have to be able to get out in front of it and let them know that this is something that we weren't aware of and we're trying to deal with it, and we don't really have a solution at this point.
Yes, I can follow up with the attorney and try to get just make sure we're on the same page as far as 25 goes and 24 goes, and then I guess try to come to some sort of agreement on reconciling the second half of
I mean,
23.
and I'm happy to have a conversation with the Public Service Commission, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Because I know how it would be if the shoe was on the other foot, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Why is that from 2020 to 2023 never been collected? Why is it just coming up now?
Stoughton Utilities operates a separate general ledger and a separate checking account. I cannot make them issue a check. That is their prerogative.
Is there any risk that we'd have to go back further than 2023?
I guess I'm not
I
sure.
would have to,
Yeah, I'm not sure when the last time utilities went for a rate case, because typically, like, the audits, like when you're doing like more than a standard rate case, like that's when PSC is really going to dig into the finances. So like I think typically you can do like standard rate adjustments, which are like a small percentage year over year. But when you go for a rate case, the PSC is going to look at all of your finances, all the expenses, and because they're going to make sure that you're not overcharging and you're getting a reasonable rate of return back. So that would be my guess as to like when PSC would dig into something like this, but I don't know when the last time there was a rate case.
I think that Jill or Shannon could probably answer that, but I don't know if that helps you or not. They're both here. When was the last? When was the last rate case?
For electric, we had one last year. Thank you. For electric, we had one last year. In 24, we are currently in with a water rate case right now.
Yeah, so these rate cases, that's when PSC usually does like they look at all your numbers and try to determine whether or not it's a fair rate of return for the utility.
And I'm not really sure what you put in your budget for rent that would show up in the rate case. I just don't remember what you put in there.
I think kind of to give some background on this is, so we had met and, our lease expired, I think actually in 22. And so we met in 23 and we had this we went through a lot of iterations in 23. Originally, the city attorney said that there shouldn't be a lease between two city departments. So then we went through and tried to determine a memorandum of understanding, but that became very generic in form. And there's a lot of things like the maintenance and exactly how those numbers are kind of equated out that was in the lease, but then was not in this memorandum of understanding. So we met at the end of, for audit purposes, at the end or beginning actually of 24, and all agreed that the rent would be $120,517.58. And we haven't paid that full amount because that was kind of lingering out the idea of working out the lease agreement. But that's never transpired. We spent then pretty much all of this, or 24, kind of walking through, or actually even figuring out that a lease isn't the lease basically what the PSC has come back and said is that the city should not be making money off of its utility. They should be made whole, basically related to depreciation and maintenance on the building. And since 1995, we've been paying the maintenance on the building and rent during that entire time. And so basically kind of the understanding is that it really should have been either if we would pay the maintenance and the depreciation, or we would pay maintenance and pay then the amount to depreciation to the city. So kind of where we sit right now is I know that there's this budget number that the city had in their budget. We have a number in our budget as well, but I think it's coming down to what we should be paying ultimately for rent based on what the Public Service Commission says that we can, what that agreement needs to look like. And we still don't have an agreement in place as far as what that does look like, but we've gotten both from Anita Galucci's office, but Baker Tilly, basically it should be maintenance and depreciation. Whether the city does all the maintenance and we pay for it, or we do all the maintenance and we pay for it and then just pay the city the depreciation.
So my question would be, would that be the same way for anything the city would lease from Stoughton Utilities?
If you were to lease something from us, I would assume so. In the end of the day, my understanding is from what we've heard back is that we can't, we're a separate fund all the way around in the sense that all of our monies that come in are, our customers' rate, the rates that we provide, that they pay for us for the services we provide. So I guess in turning that back around to the other side is we can't make money on the city either. I'm sure that's exactly how they would view that. So it needs to be in a way in which, and over time we've paid that depreciation because that building was built or purchased by the city in '94 for $335,000. And so I think if we were to build a building, you were to co-locate in that, I think that initial years would be a lot of money for that depreciation, but as that building depreciates out, then it would be less for that.
Right. And the reason I bring that up is because we do lease space from utilities on our towers. So I'm wondering how that would work.
Lease space from the
For,
utility
for our sirens on the towers.
Yep, and we actually, with the sirens on the towers, we've just actually, that agreement got worked out, if this was a third party in that situation, so like on First South Tower, that just got approved. We have basically, all we asked for was the rent to be what actually is half of our cost of our generator maintenance, so $600 a year. If that had been, and we need to structure that entire lease just like it is if it was TDS or something else leasing that space. But because it's emergency services, because ultimately it's for the city, because we can't make money on you, then it was for this lesser amount. Because we actually looked into, we did have Verizon interested in leasing space on that tower, and we thought we could, at least our consultant provided us and thought that it was had a value of about $35,000 to us annually.
So I don't know if we can make a recommendation or a decision tonight. It seems like we still have some more work to do.
Yeah, but I kind of feel like, I know, like you said, there's an urgency. I think we probably need to make the decision by next meeting, it feels like. I don't think we want to stretch it out past that.
Yeah, and I guess, if I need to make a call to try to get connected to the other attorney, I'm more than happy to do that too, if that's one of the issues.
Yeah, and I'll follow up with Anita, and we'll try to get at least something back to the.
Yeah, we need closure on this. We need to know what to do here, and I'm sure you guys would like to have closure as well.
And I think a lot of the issue was I was on vacation, and then I got a variety of different things, and so I do believe that her and I hadn't connected. We did actually speak on Friday. I don't think that we've necessarily resolved anything completely, but I do think if you guys are able to push this off for a little bit more time, then I think it gives us the opportunity to meet, talk through it, and see what is even possible at this point.
And I assume if push comes to shove and we have to write it off, there'd have to be a resolution for that?
I
At
think
this point, well, that's up to you folks, but at this point, I'm going to have to not recognize it as a conservative governmental accountant unless you folks tell me otherwise. So it's going to affect the general fund.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think next meeting is probably it feels like the deadline for us.
Yeah. Is next meeting going to work for you, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't take too long to do journal entries, but
Okay.
like I said, the auditors will want an answer, both sides of the audit.
Yeah, so I think we might want to at least give the council a heads up that we might see that as a time-sensitive item.
Anything else on that fun topic?
Not for myself.
on to number 9, discussion and possible action regarding GIP Glacier Marine irrevocable line of credit.
At the last meeting, you folks had requested some options out there, so Nicole Marie and I talked about the topic. We came up with 4 different options that I put in my memo. I don't have recommendations anyway as to which one is better.
So Dave, I guess a question for you. The letter of credit, is that, do we have an unexpired letter of credit at this point? I know you had asked to make the draw on it, and
I don't know the answer to that question. The letter of credit said we had to do a draw by December 15th. I requested the draw on December 13th, and then we got put on hold. So I do not know if that's still legally a route we can go or not.
Right. So we'll have to get clarity from the bank, because that should have been paid out if we requested it based on the procedures of the letter of credit. I mean, we can, if there's direction from the committee to negotiate some sort of other agreement, we're going to need financial security of some kind, because otherwise it's just an outstanding obligation that we might not collect. So I think if the committee or council wants to try to renegotiate something, the first step is going to be they have to get us a brand new letter of credit to guarantee their obligations.
What was the I'm trying to remember from the last meeting. What was the reason that they didn't do the dispersal?
When we negotiated the developers agreement, we had values and benchmarks built into it, and I think I'm going to use the word miscalculation on the property owner's part about when that value was going to occur. I think they felt like it occurred immediately upon the completion of the building, not understanding when the property is assessed and when we actually receive the property tax for that assessment. So I believe they miss it by, I'm going to say, at least a year because of that. And they basically came to us asking for relief. Their plan is, as you can see on here, is to finish the other 2 buildings. From what I gather, finishing the other 2 buildings are going to get us in the financial place that we hope to be. But the question is do we want to enforce, all or partial letter of credit that we're actually owed? Or do we want to grant them relief? And if we do, what's the best option?
I have some familiarity with lines of credit in my history. I totally agree with you that if we do decide to extend, we need to have some kind of backing. I guess I'm just surprised if we requested the funds, what stopped it. I get what we talked about.
I stopped it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah,
okay. I thought it was the bank. I was like, wait a minute, they can't.
Yeah, okay. That's good to know. I was confused as why the bank was.
I asked it to be paused until we could have the conversation, not really fully understanding. It was like Dave was going for vacation. I got the email. I paused it, not really understanding the full ramifications. The Grossos would have been here tonight, but they're on their own vacation. So I think they were interested in us having a conversation, maybe giving the city attorney or the finance director some direction, and then when they get back from vacation, if you feel like we can give them the answer may be, no, you owe us the money, we're going to draw on it and figure out what we have to do that. Or if you want us to try to negotiate some sort of a settlement, we could do that. Or what was the third option? I think it was half of it. Is that what it is? So that might be another way to go about doing it. But I think for tonight, we're looking for some direction.
Mm-hmm.
We've never had to draw a line of credit, which is a good thing. If we would have had a secured line of credit on the NAFA building, we would have had to draw on that one. And that's the reason we started that practice, because the very first project in that TIF district never got fully developed. It still isn't to this day. So we haven't received the increment that we anticipated when the district was formed. Fortunately for us, Emmy Roth went in there and helped balance the finances in that district. So I think we had one other property that we had an incentive that was slightly different from this, and they were able to meet their benchmarks. So they were awarded the incentive to do so. So I think their intent was good. The execution wasn't quite there because I don't think there's a full understanding basically of the dates. And they still anticipate completing the project, and at the end of the day, that's my hope, is that the project is completed.
If we were to go with option A, what's the financial hit to the budget?
Let me look at the memo here.
So the money actually belongs to the TIF district and not to general fund, is that correct?
Correct. Assuming option A is chosen and assuming the buildings come in the value that they're anticipating, we in effect get our money, but a year later than we would have normally had it. So right now, that 75,000 roughly, we would be having the cash to invest if we needed to. That TIF is actually underwater, so that would help lower the amount of interest that it's paying. But then if we allow them to continue on it, we have the buildings, we'd much rather have the development than the cash.
Does anybody have any initial thoughts on which way, they're leaning?
I mean, I feel that they're gonna finish this construction out in good faith, so, but it would be good if we could get some sort of bridging just in case something happens with it.
Yeah, and I think we would mandate that they extend the letter of credit, to March 27th. And I think these bullet points are generally good, so we can sort of use that as a basis to have the conversation with them.
I agree, and yeah, especially that was what I looked at, is that fourth bullet point, the extension feels very important.
So you think we have to have you draft something to that and bring it back and take it from here to council, or what do you think?
Yes, I agree with that. Basically, get our direction from the committee to move forward, and then assuming they agree to these terms, which I don't know how why they wouldn't, but so yes, then assuming that's all agreeable, I can put an agreement, basically an amendment to the purchase and sale agreement, and then bring that back here for recommendation and then to council.
Adrian, Tanya, anything?
So do you want a motion to that effect, or is what you're hearing enough direction?
I think I've got a consensus to move forward with. It seems like option A is the preferred route.
I think that sounds good to me.
Okay.
I agree as well.
Brett?
Dave, in light of this, which looks like, it was just 1 year miscalculated, was there anything that we could have done differently to have caught this right at the beginning, or if we use this as a practice moving forward, is there something that we could look for?
I don't think we could have caught anything. When I did my projections maybe a year ago, I said, okay, if they construct a building of this value, they'll be fine, but they didn't hit that value. So it was just a delay in construction. I suppose what we could do, in the past, we've been lowering the line of credit because they've been achieving it by the formula. Maybe we don't do that in the future, just because if they're going to take the good, where lowering the line of credit when things are working in their favor, they should not contest it when it's not working in their favor. But I don't think anything else could have been done to not have this occur in the future. So this would be a reasonable thing to go forward. However, the formula would have to be tweaked going forward because the formula with a 1.5% decrease in the mill rate each year was developed during COVID, and it's not realistic anymore.
Okay, that was my follow-up question, so I think maybe we can review that rate.
And one question, I guess, that comes to mind for the letter of credit amount. So I believe the original was 500,000 based on the estimated.
550.
Yeah. Is the request to have that full amount remain, or are we doing it for the outstanding balance of roughly 77?
Right now, the letter of credit, and I'm going from memory, was about 134,000.
Okay, so it has been reduced. Okay.
It has been reduced. I would just propose that we keep it at the 134 to make sure that we've got, the advantage to us.
Yes, and if anything, that excess cost covers administrative expenses that the city has incurred. So I think that's totally fair.
Agreed.
Rick, do you want to contact the Grossos, or should I?
I am more than happy to make the initial contact, Dave.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Should we move on to number 10? So this is a resolution to, it sounds like it's to consolidate 2 part-time positions into a full-time position. I have a technical question, but I'll hold that to the end.
Okay, so we have, in the past, had 2 part-time positions for case managers at the senior center. Did you have a chance to read through the memo? Okay, so we've really had difficulties not only attracting good talent, but also retaining that. So with that being said, we recently had a retirement announcement made by a 8-year employee, 8-year veteran with us who was absolutely fabulous. And then the other part-time position that we've constantly had turnover in, we're really struggling to get some talent in there. So looking at the history of the position and the amount of time that we need to spend training and get the person up to speed, by the time we do that, these individuals who we vetted who said they wanted a part-time position end up leaving us because they either find a full-time position elsewhere or there's other things that become a priority for them. So we've had great success with our existing full-time case managers. As you probably know, there is a wait list of how long, Cindy?
A couple weeks.
Couple of week wait lists before people can even get in to see if they're new being received in. So what we would like to do is take those 2 part-time positions, combine them into 1 full-time position. And I tried to lay out here for you so you could understand worst case scenario if somebody took full benefits for a family, what that would look like cost-wise. And then on the flip side, I took it on looking at the least expensive, which would be just taking employee-only benefits. There's always that option that somebody may opt out, not very popular, so.
But also what was already budgeted.
Yeah, so we had dollars that were already budgeted because we did have one individual who took employee and spouse, so that helped us out looking at 2025's budget. So from there, I'm going to have Cindy take over and talk about where our funding is going to come from. And then I want you to keep in mind, long term, this is something that we think the city really should take over, and we shouldn't be using this alternative method, but we really need this position. So with that,
So the discussion that Dave and the mayor and AJ and I had was from our endowment fund, the interest income from there could support this position, the increase that is needed for 2025. Because obviously we didn't know about the retirement,
Right.
so to try to budget it, we didn't know about it when we were putting together the 2025 budget. So the interest income would be able to cover the 15 or so $1,000, I think, that the shortfall would be for 2025.
Not hearing anything I don't hear at work. To be real honest, it is hard to get people.
It is.
And
Well-
you touch on the opportunity cost, or it's kind of an unrealized cost of continually having to train.
Yeah, and keeping in mind, we only have 2 full-time case managers who have full-time caseload. So having them trying to do this training at the same time and constantly having that turnover, obviously you get it, Patrick. It's difficult. And it's difficult to find individuals that are truly interested in part-time employment long-term. We were real spoiled with Marla.
Yeah.
So just the budget impact, it's 25,418. Is that, I was trying to put the numbers together at lunch today. Is that, for lack of a better term, is that moving money from interest, or is that actually operational budget?
Dave, can you answer that?
Well, to clarify a statement, we had originally talked about interest earnings on the endowment funds, which is about 34,000 for the year. The 25,000 is for just 10 months in calendar year 2025, because I'm assuming the new person wouldn't start until March. Between interviewing and 2-week notice and things like that. However, there is unspent donations in the general fund for senior center. So I'm proposing that we use those unspent donations and then start going into the interest earnings. Did that answer your question, Paul?
It did.
Yeah, the other thing we talked about is, we anticipate a budget request for next year. We're also somewhat confident, but nowadays you never know what's going to happen with the interest rates. If they stay where they're at now, we still would be able to fund it out of that interest from the gift fund if push came to shove. Ideally, it would come out of the general fund. So I think long-term that is the plan.
Other questions? Anyone? Other discussion?
I'll move to approve move to recommend the resolution to council.
Okay, so we have motion by Brett, second by Gina. I'm sorry, I just can't. It just makes me so funny. Second by Greg. Any further discussions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, shoot, sorry. Any opposed? Okay, that carries.
Thank you all.
Last item is the budget calendar.
Just a recap, if you remember last year, we proposed modifying the meeting schedules on the budget a little bit. We still kept the CIP meetings with the CIP ad hoc committee for all the capital items and related bond, but we switched it from having committee of the whole meet on the budget to having finance meet 2, possibly 3 times, and then the council would see the budget once. They'd have the chance to ask questions, and then they'd have it again for budget review process. We just kind of wanted to codify the process, assuming that you're okay with it, so that council approves that calendar, so there's no question from any of the alderpersons what is going to be on the meeting schedule for the upcoming year.
And
Nicole
that
Marie, is there anything you'd wanted to add on that topic?
Nothing really to add, but if the calendar itself is lengthy to look at, if you look at the budget policy, it kind of condenses it down and gives a shorter timeline of what activities happen when throughout the months.
Thank you.
And we kind of ran this last year this way, right? No.
Correct.
Well, yes.
Okay.
I think there were, the last time that we went through the budget, then there were concerns by some council members about having to review the information and then be able to formulate questions, make adjustments, and then see it a second time. So that, I think we have the calendar so that accommodates that this time. I think there were just a few frustrations the last time, but we can learn.
So do we need to approve this or anything, or this is more informational?
Well, assuming that you're in favor of it, we'll write up an actual resolution with the required documentation for the council to vote on.
Anybody have concerns? All right. Hearing none, then I'd say we move forward with it. And I happen to like the calendar. I'm kind of a calendar and map geek, so.
I forgot what all my colors meant, so otherwise I would have explained that certain colors are certain meetings, but you can kind of, as you read through, get the gist of.
I shade all my meetings at work. It drives people crazy. All right, so then let's see. This is weird. How come the case manager budget? I guess we did have another item. Discussion and possible action regarding policy updates, fund balance policy, debt management policy, and post-issuance policy and disposal policy.
I'm going to ask that we defer this to the next meeting just so that there's adequate time to go over the policies, because we've only got 9 minutes left according to my clock here.
That works. And then we have our future agenda items. So is there anything else we need to discuss in the 9 or 8 minutes we have remaining? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Greg put his thumb up first, though, so, okay. Okay, Brett and Greg, keep it up for the, keep our string up here. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you.